I think best place to start is with my mother. Long-term mentality is the most important thing.
The people want to know, like, what's your Dap released the Powers Volume 2 EP in April of 2020, shortly followed by the deluxe version a month later, alongside graduating from Columbia Law School. He was recently admitted to the NY Bar and released the EP Glad You Made It This Far in February 2021. He's set to release the sequel, Powers Volume 2, in July, and we're already in August. So he's done a lot since then and is continuing to release. I think just a few minutes before joining our session, he was dropping another project. So I'm super excited to have him hot off the press. Dap, welcome to the Pros on Process stage.
What's good, family? Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So just to catch some people up, I got the privilege of meeting you. I think it was back in 2016 or maybe 20, 2017,
16,
2016.
17, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was likely at a house party vibe or something. I don't know if you recall, but
Barely.
it was definitely good energy. I know we were all kind of in a space with family, right?
Yeah.
And that's likely any of the connections I've made and kept since New York, it's been like that. And so I got put onto your music way back then, and there was no turning back. I remember one of the first songs that I gravitated towards was Mexico. And I think one of the first things I texted you was like, yo, the alliteration in this song.
I remember that message.
I literally will never forget that because I was like, I am a poet, a naturalist in that sense. So I appreciate the thought given to sentence structure, syntax, but just the thought there. And I was like caught off guard by that lyric. So it was take your time, you take it to the good time.
Take your time.
I was literally like, yo, this is the truth. He's actually like smart with the lyrics and like it makes sense sonically. So it was incredible. Since then, I've been an avid supporter to you and all of your projects and consider myself a part of the Contract family. You and your life partner, Reka, have inspired me so much. And I'm so excited to tap in with you on how you've been able to do it all. So take us back, right? You have this musical family, you've been raised in artistry. Take us back to those early days grinding out towards your dream as a part of a musical family and walk us through how your creative upbringing and interests led you to pursuing a law degree and starting a career in law. Being transparent here, right? I think one of the things that I want to uncover in this realm of life that you're exploring is being transparent on how you've been juggling those priorities and your rationale for pursuing both.
I think best place to start is with my mother. She raised us all playing the piano. Like in church, she played the organ. To this day, she still plays the organ every Sunday when she can. So she raised us all piano lessons very early. I started playing when I was 4 years old, I think, and my brother and sister were the same. And so we were sort of coined the Nigerian family bond trap. I don't know if you've watched Sound of Music, but our whole family, our cousins, aunties, uncles, all either sing or play an instrument or just do something in the creative space. My dad is a photographer and also has a bigger music library than all of the musicians, even though he doesn't necessarily play an instrument himself. So that's really where I get the roots from. And I grew up with everything from Fela Kuti, of course, classic Nigerian legends and high life music and Afrobeat music, all the way to the Beatles and classic Motown records, Stevie Wonders, Whitney Houston's, etc., all the way to house music, because I went to boarding school in the UK when I was 10 years old. And it was when I was 14 that I fell in love with hip hop. I had only got doses of the biggest artists, like your 50 Cents, Eminem's at the time, Kanye West, but I didn't really have enough information to go digging myself. So I just started with that and started producing in high school. My friends were all rappers, and one by one, they all kind of grew out of it or just weren't really up for keeping it going, you know. So I started writing my own lyrics when I turned 17. And then put out my first project at 18. And at that point, I got the bug and I knew I was never going to stop, and music was what I really wanted to do for the rest of my life. So in terms of the law, when I was 18, I went to college in the US after being in high school in the UK. I went to Berklee College of Music for a year, and then went to Brown University. And that's when I really started digging my heels in and, spending as much time as I could making music, trying to figure out how to shoot videos, booking shows, doing my first shows and that sort of stuff. And as I went along, I started noticing this trend of, as soon as Chance the Rapper came along, independence became such a loud word, and that conversation started, picking up steam. And then you have the Joey Badasses. I was following his career, and Nipsey Hussle, rest in peace. I was following his career, and I started to see my favorite artists and my peers around me all start to complain about label issues. I signed to this label, it's a celebration, and 6 months later, I don't have creative control. Label isn't doing this, isn't doing that, and I don't think it's an issue per se with the labels alone. I think it's a two-way street. Both parties need to gain value from that relationship. So I don't think it's anything against labels particularly, but it's just the whole system needs to be balanced more towards the artist. So seeing that, I realized that I didn't want to drop out of school and try and get a record deal like most rappers. That's the stereotype we've kind of put on rappers. So I wanted to understand my contracts, be able to protect myself and also my peers. And the back end of my career, after doing this for X amount of years, when I can't run up and down stage anymore and have that energy, I wanted to have some kind of exit plan, something I could do that will add value and pass that information on. So one of my goals is to set up an entertainment legal practice in Nigeria one day, which is going to take a lot to do. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but that's important to me for all these reasons. And that's why I ended up deciding to apply to law school and pursue a law degree.
That's incredible. And I think the way you've been able to connect the dots and be strategic for the long term is very admirable as well. Just understanding that the present moment is very important to live in the present moment, but you always have your eye on kind of the grander scheme of things, which I think is really powerful. You did allude to something that has been a part of your journey, in that you pride yourself on writing your own songs, making your own beats, producing and directing your own stuff. So you think of yourself as like a full service studio. Can you walk us through your process for creating a concept for a project from start to finish, knowing how many hats and roles you play? And then for those of us who know a thing or two about production, obviously we know you're working with a small but mighty team of like firms that are doing it. Who would you give some flowers to as well? Process, that have been instrumental to you in your journey?
Let me start with my wife, Reka. This is her painting behind me. This is artwork for the project I'm Glad You Made It This Far that came out in February. Okay, so I started making my own videos in 2018, and she helped me film every video, and I directed and edited them. So between both of us, we were kind of doing everything ourselves. So she made a bunch of the merch. The merch you're wearing, actually, she handmade and painted from Everybody Falls in the Summer, which came out in 2018. She helped me at shows, like when I'm chaotically backstage trying to get the sound guy to turn the mic on as I'm backstage, the mic isn't on. Like, she's running to the sound booth to tell the guy to turn the sound on. Just everything I could need. Like, she supported me the whole way. So that's definitely the first person. But before we met, my friends in college, I think, were the starting point, because I was very maybe overprotective of my music, because of everything I'd seen in the industry and how dirty it could be. So I didn't want to get a manager. I didn't want to get a booking agent or anything, label. I didn't want to give anyone any piece of my ownership of my creations. But as I went along, I realized, like you said, you need a team to really elevate to the level you want to elevate to. And without me asking, just going ham in school while doing all my classes and everything, I was just making beats every day, trying to make songs, put out projects. And my friends just saw that grind and were like, yo, we're also trying to, feed ourselves and feed our families, working in finance or consulting or whatever, but we also have this interest in entertainment. And they all just banded around me without me even having to ask, and helped me set up my website, the first website I had, helped me start getting shows, helped me, start collaborating with other artists and that sort of thing. So I think Mariana Carvalho, one of my friends who was the year above us at Brown, Chris Pineda, who is also a lawyer, is a USC law at the moment. Ben Kiflum, of course, who Ben was my freshman year at Brown. Ben actually wrote my name down on the like a talent show they had. It's like the first weekend or first 3 weeks or something. And I'm shy, so I didn't really want to do anything. Coming from Berkeley, I'm like, let me introduce my music and that side of my personality slowly. But he was like, yo, you make music? Nah, I'm gonna sign you up, bro. Yeah, you dope. I was like, you know, so those three in particular were instrumental. And Edgar, who is a friend of my friend Chris, who lives in LA, he was also very instrumental in just helping me build from those early days, the first couple of years. And to answer your other question, in terms of balancing all these things and why it's so important to me, I think starting out, I knew that long-term mentality is the most important thing, because you don't get great at anything overnight. It's just going to take years of hard work. And I had the privilege of knowing that because I started playing the piano at 4 years old. So at age 14, I'd already been playing for 10 years. And I could see the progression. I could see myself wake up in the morning and know how to play that scale better, practice all day, and then wake up the next day and get better. But I saw that consistently for so long that I knew no matter what I'm trying to do, if I start today and I don't stop and I work intelligently and conscientiously, I'll get there eventually. So that helped me understand the value of knowing how to do things myself. Like I started as a producer, so I was always going to do that. Once I started writing, I wanted to record myself. I still can't engineer to this day, but I can mix to a certain degree. So I can tell the engineer, oh, I heard this thing. I think it's because of this, because I've done it myself before. Like, can you tweak this in this way? You know, I have more information to work with. With videos, I knew I wouldn't be able to make better videos than someone whose whole life is just making videos. But I wanted to have that experience, and I was making videos for 2 years before I really started, you know, getting people to help me out with that. So I think it was important just to keep my ownership and also have a deeper understanding of everything across the spectrum of an artist's career. So I have a record label in my mind. So if I ever decide to work with a record label, someone's not pulling their weight, I know exactly why, and I can call it out and I can recognize that, and I can make sure that everything is getting done because I've done it myself, you know. And in terms of juggling it, this is the question of my life. I don't know how it gets done, and I always end up reverting back to this. I just love this way too much, and there's no way I couldn't do it. Like if I didn't do it, being a lawyer and going to law school would be harder if I didn't have this escape, you know. So I'm trying to make them make sense together. And that passion alone, when you really love something, sleepless nights are fine. Missing parties on weekends, working through the weekend, that's fine. You know, not going home for Christmas holiday, for example, because say I'm on tour or something, which inevitably will probably happen to me a bunch of times in my life. Like, that's fine, because I've loved this for so long that I can't imagine life without it, you know. So that's really what helps me get through it. And just discipline from playing the piano for so long helps me schedule things out. And, you know, if I work till 10 p.m. on a weekday on a case, and I know I have 2 hours to make a song, like I have the discipline to like focus myself and keep that energy up and get it done because I just love it that much.
Definitely. You brushed on so many important topics. I do think landing on discipline is a very important one, right? Because
100%.
At the end of the day, that's the string across your entire life, starting at 4, having the discipline to keep honing that craft and skill set. And I do think it just speaks volumes to how you're perceived across your peer set as an artist. You can definitely tell that discipline through your work and your craft, that you've been doing this for a while. And even when you do explore and experiment in new areas, it's like the discipline of just knowing how to navigate that, you know, that sticky area of like
that uncomfortability.
Yeah, it still shows. And so I do appreciate you taking us on that journey with you. That brings me to your Instagram, which helps us, right? Your Instagram is a visual story of your journey. You have this method of storytelling through your photos, through your graphics, that bring someone who maybe not be as familiar with your work through the duration of your life, basically. Yeah. How important is transparency to you on your journey? And for those who admire you and the way you bring that transparency to life, a little bit more tactically, can you shed some light on your process for creating some of those graphics and tools on Instagram that kind of bring that to life?
When I was 14 and I made my first beat, as you could probably tell, I was a super nerd and I was a mathematician. So I cared about numbers, and I just cared about, like, I'm type A personality for sure. So I just cared about keeping a thread. And that's where that storytelling comes from, because I understood from an early age that the process and the journey is more important than destination, you know? So I named my first beat First, the date I made it, where I was when I made it, and the software and keyboard I used to make it with. And every single beat since then has been the same, all the way to my recent beat I made yesterday. It was 9:59. I'm trying to get to 1K before the end of the year. But this is over kind of 10 years now, right? Or 14 years rather. That meticulousness and wanting to be able to keep track of what's happening at all stages. I can go back and see, okay, 2012, January 15th, this is where my mind was at. And I can track what was influencing me, what I was listening to, what came out at the time. And I kind of track my own development over time. So my Instagram, I wanted it to also be a visual, like these are timestamps. Like you can see when I went to Abbey Road in 2015, you can see the videos, see the pictures. When I performed at Native Land in Nigeria in 2017, you can see the videos, you can see the pictures, and you can kind of follow the journey all the way up. So people know that it's not just woke up one day and I was famous and everything worked and I had a team and management and a label deal and video budget and marketing budget. It doesn't work like that. And I think because a lot of the people in music, especially in the hip hop community, are young, so they don't realize that what you're seeing is the end. You're not seeing all the work that went into it, all the behind the scenes, unless someone tells you. So that's important to me to keep that track record and have those timestamps so people can see not just the blissful parts, but also the mistakes and all the errors, the gaps that I wish I could have filled if I could do this over again, you know.
All right, so you're very meticulous about chronicling your journey and being transparent about that. Let's talk about those naming conventions a bit. You gave us a little insight into how you thought through naming your beats. Your process for naming your work, is that similar? Like what's the behind the scenes into why you have coined Contract Thursdays, for example, or a Powers or a Goodbye Never? What is the, spirit behind some of those naming conventions?
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I'm tripping and I forgot someone who I definitely need to highlight. And his name is Shaney. He used to go by Shane Chubbs when he was rapping. And we had a duo actually called The Contract. So that's how I got my name. I used to just be DAP, which is an acronym for Balakwa Akinkabe Productions, when I only wanted to produce, never wanted to rap because I was too shy. And after I started writing and we were the only two kind of really still pursuing this, we made this duo and put out a tape in 2014, I think, or 13, I think it was 14 though, called Jam on Scones. And so Shaney is my naming guy. He's the one that has the ear, he has the eye, he has the taste, the aesthetic. So while I'm just here plugging away at the beats and writing the lyrics and I can make the music, I didn't really understand branding and the business side of things and how you present that in a way that can, accelerate those numbers and you growing your fan base and stuff. So I always used to go to him for song titles, album titles, track listing and arrangement and order of things, because he was always on point with that stuff. And that was just seeing artists like Russ drop a song on SoundCloud for every week for 5 years or something, and seeing the value of putting a single out week to week to week and building that momentum. So that's why I started Contract Thursdays. But Goodbye for Never, for example, was me in college going through a lot emotionally, just growing pains, just figuring life out, adulting, being 20, 21 years old, about to graduate and wondering what you're going to do to feed yourself, your family. I wanted to acknowledge that I might not make it as a musician, which is a scary thing for anyone to let come out of their mouth because you feel like jinxing it, but I just don't feel like that. I think some of the greatest artists ever we will never know of because they didn't make it for whatever reason. But I knew, and I say on I'm glad you made it this far, actually, I might not make it rapping, but I resumed it. And that was to say, even if this doesn't work, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to survive. But Goodbye for Never is speaking to music in that I'll never say goodbye to this, no matter what I'm doing in my life. I want to be making beats till I'm 95, like I never, ever, ever want to stop. So that's how that title came along. And that tape was really my first real complete project. So it's as they say, your first real tape is your whole life up until that point. So that's a combination of all of that coming together. And I think that's why it sparked off my whole career, because everyone could feel how real it was to me. Everybody Falls in the Summer, for example, that was turning 25 and missing outside, feeling like we're all inside on computers all the time, watching the Gen Z coming behind us all on their iPhones. And I want to remind myself the importance of going outside, getting fresh air, sunshine, resting. And Everybody Falls in the Summer was kind of I made it during the summer. And that was the idea of just, what it's like to be an adult and falling in love and getting married and about to have kids, like the things you worry about. That's what I really put into that project. So yeah, it's a mixture of just life experiences. Shaney definitely helping me pick titles and arranging the order of the album and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a combination of things.
Appreciate that, and big shout out to Everybody Falls in the Summer. That was the anthem to my New York experience. I very much remember, the showcases and kind of vibing out with all the crew. Cool. So I think anybody who has heard your music or been to a showcase, the thing in our mind is there's no way you haven't received offers to like sign a label or move forward aggressively, So I think one of the things that I want to pick your brain on is kind of what goes through your mind when approached, like, and maybe provide transparency for people on like the rationale for why you haven't, right? And I think it's for anybody who's been in your space, it's kind of like a matter of when he wants to, is what everybody like feels is really going on. I know you're a faith-based artist as well, right? 100%. And so I know that communication, kind of understanding the right time and the right opportunities likely has to do a lot with kind of just tapping in on,
you feel it coming, the energy, the powers.
Yeah,
we'll let you know when it's time.
Yeah, just shedding some light for artists who are maybe navigating that space, receiving offers that may not be in their best interest, and understanding how their faith could play a role in it all.
So ownership, first of all, was a very important thing to me. And I noticed that that's what artists were fighting for and weren't getting. So I kind of spotted that I couldn't go to a label with 500 followers and barely any streams and having not done many shows or anything and try and demand that. So the most important reason for keeping it off is because I wanted to reach a certain stage, which I think I've articulated for myself in my mind, but it shifts, when different things happen. But I have a stage where I know like this is where I want to get to, because I believe I'll have this amount of leverage to sit in front of a label and say, okay, this is what I've done for 10 years by myself, investing my own personal money that I earned into this, and family supporting as well, which is another privilege that should be acknowledged. And I want to keep my masters and my publishing, but I still feel like there's a way for both of us to profit from this relationship. That's where I want to get to before I really start seriously having that conversation. But I think it's also important to highlight that everyone's journey is going to be different. And while a lot of artists have signed early before they were maybe 18, some of them before they were 21, 25, and some others, and it's been awful, and they've been stuck in deals, trapped in deals, didn't understand their contracts, didn't have enough money to afford a good enough lawyer to protect them, and all those things go together. There are also some artists who signed very early, and that was exactly what they needed probably, So I think for me, I knew that I was willing to put in the work over an extended amount of time. And it was just about when is the right time going to be, and what do I want the conditions to be? Like, what do I want to be able to bring to the table? Because then I think that's how I protect myself, when I can show that you can recoup your investment in me because I've done it consistently for this amount of years and this many times already. So that's why I put it off. And I haven't had many labels approach me. Like right now, it's starting to happen. It's starting to pick up steam. And I think that's naturally, again, because it's probably time is coming. And I put in that work now where I'm starting to look for the big budget to put behind my music. And that's where the label conversation starts, because investing all your savings into this, it's also not realistic because you got to eat, So it was just understanding that I needed a little bit more experience and leverage to demand what I really care about in those conversations.
That's incredibly smart and thoughtful. And I think that'll help a lot of people that maybe navigate in this space as well. And I know, you've been doing it all while also being a full-time law student. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Passing the bar. But like, I remember, when we were in New York, you were fully still a student and doing all these showcases and pumping out visual projects and hosting. And the people want to know, like, what's your creative routine? How have you been able to manage that all? Like, I know you're transitioning into a new phase of life where you now likely can breathe a little bit more. it wasn't always like that. And I think a lot of artists struggle sometimes even with just having like a 9 to 5 or just like a regular job or whatever and trying to do their art too. But you're an example of somebody who's been able to do it on a level that's like he's 3 or 4 people, you know? So really walk us through, you know, that creative discipline, if you're able to share some transparency on like, you know, this is the time I wake up. This is like how I block it out. You only have 24 hours in a day. I use 30 of them, you know?
This is where I start to sound crazy. Again, like I said before, man, I love it too much that I would rather not sleep. And I know that's not healthy, but nothing on this planet will stop me from doing this, you know? So my days are like law school, for example, because college was a little easier to balance things. But law school is where it became like, I was told, yeah, you did a good job balancing this in college, but I don't know if you can do this at an Ivy League law school. Do you understand what you're getting into? And I tried to stop, like, trying to be mature about it and say, okay, I got to focus on this and execute this properly. As soon as I started law school, all my creative juices started flowing because I'm reading constitutional law, learning about, you know, how my life is like this as an immigrant in this country, for example, learning about criminal law, learning about real estate and property, and all this information is what I put in my music. My music is very autobiographical. It's the truth, and it's also trying to spread information. So just reading books, talking to people, having conversations, that's what inspires me. So I couldn't turn that off being in school. So I just had to figure out how to balance it. And what I would do was get my legal work done, whether it's academic or now being a full-time lawyer, getting that done, and use music as an incentive to get that done. And then also when I get to my music at say 10 p.m. on a weekday, and I can either sleep or I can make a song for 5 hours, knowing that if I get that song done, I'm happy to go to work tomorrow morning because I'm going to feel so much better, which is why I said it would be harder for me to be a lawyer without the music. Treating myself as one entity as opposed to lawyer by day, musician by night, like making them, you know, intertwined makes it easier to balance the two, because it's not I have to leave this to do this. Like they both go together. I speak to people about my music and it helps me in my legal work because I'm working in a media group at a firm. But also my legal knowledge is stuff that I can use in my music, in my lyrics and my content and information I'm trying to spread. So the motivation to have the energy to do that, because the hours in the day are there. Whatever job you're doing, there's some hours sprinkled in that week that you can work on your music or your art, whatever it is. But it's hard to get the motivation because you're so exhausted. I think loving the craft and recognizing what it is you love about creating and honing in on that and focusing on that, that'll always keep your energy up and you can get through it. And the part that I haven't figured out yet is how you do that in a healthy way and sleep, drink water, go outside, work out, you know, call your family, you know, spend time with your significant other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
No, I think that's an incredible response. And it sheds some light into how your law degree or pursuing that actually ended up being an inspiration for some of your music and your projects. I think in the perfect world, all of our life ends up fueling what we love. So you've done well with like, you know, let's turn this video shoot into an opportunity to hang out with people we love. Let's like collaborate with my siblings and my mom on this project. So that's us hanging out and having quality time. It's like we're being strategic with how we do it, but at the end of the day, there are going to be some things that are lost, right? Like some moves that can't be made, some birthdays that may be missed. And so you know, balancing all of that and knowing your priorities as an artist is going to be important, but it's possible. And that's half of the battle, is like encouraging artists to know that it is possible. And, you know, as you're grinding out on these things now, it really does reap the benefits later, right? And you have to kind of weigh what's important. Every artist has its ups and downs on their journey. And if you could go back, right, and do anything different along the way. Or, you know, there are some people that don't like that question, right? Some people are like, no,
I love that question.
Some people,
transparency.
You know,
transparency is important.
if you can deal with that, cool. But even if all things stay the same, you know, what advice would you give to help artists avoid maybe a mistake that you've made along the way or something that you've learned from along the way?
I think trusting yourself early on, being the person who's creating the art and has lived the experiences from which the art is coming from. Like no matter how little experience you have, there's a feeling you have in your gut where you know more than the person who has 15 years experience, because it's you and your creations, right? So I was told not to take this meeting with a major exec in the industry that everyone probably know the name of, because my manager felt that he might be able to get into my head and pull me away from him. This was a personal thing between him and X person. And I didn't take that meeting because, being a loyal person, I trusted him, and I was like, okay, if you say that, I understand, and that's fine. That's cool. I won't take the meeting. But looking back on it, I wish I did, because I knew where my lines were. No one was going to pull me out of my character over a check or over, false promises or anything. So I wish I took the meeting, just because, again, extra information to work with. I wouldn't have had to sign the deal, but I would have known what it looked like. I'd have received the contract and known this is what labels are sending people, And I could have made that judgment for myself, sitting across the table from him, looking him in the eye and seeing what he was really about, after hearing all the horror stories from everyone in the industry. So that's one thing. I think trusting myself early on in those junctions where I could have, dropped out of school, gone into music, or signed a label deal, or whatever the case may be.
That's an interesting perspective, because I do think, after living life and kind of looking back, I do appreciate your transparency on just like admitting that you would like change something, right? I've gotten mixed feelings about that question, which is why I always pose it in two different ways. But I like to ask people that question, because I do think it gives people coming up a chance, right, to like not have to live through a moment that someone else has lived through and didn't like, right? So we take those inputs and we're able to then effectively change how we move. One of the questions that I love to leave on is just giving you a chance to kind of air out what you're excited about, right? Like, I know you just dropped something. By the time I post this, though, you will likely have already dropped what you're actually about to talk about. So anything you are looking forward to in the future that you're excited about, and then also, include information about where viewers can find you and your work. How do people tap in with you if they're interested in being a part of the Contract family and all that?
First things first, I just put out a video 30 minutes ago. It's called TDK. It's the third track off of Powers Volume 2, which is the current project that's out. I'm very excited about that. Again, I've shot a lot of videos between just me and my wife. And this is the first, or one of the few, not the first, definitely not the first, one of the few that I've really had a proper director, videographer, collaborate with me on that. And have a friend of mine, shout out to Kayla, who's starring in the video, but friends helping in an actress or actor capacity. So I'm very excited about that video. It's called TDK. And following that, patience. I'm just trying to hold myself back from dropping everything, because if I had it my way, me 5 years ago, I'm firing everything at the same time. Once a week is up and like, oh, the likes are slowing down, it's the next one, So I'm trying to have some patience and save two pre-recorded live performances.
You got some stuff in the vault.
I got some joints. I got these 2 performances I'm very excited about. Being in COVID and I couldn't do live shows, I tried to, put the work in to master how to do a live stream, how to do a pre-recorded thing, because that also will help with, when you try and do a Tiny Desk concert, when you do colors, when you do late night TV shows, the Jimmy Fallons, the Jimmy Kimmels, etc. So I've been trying to master that. And I have a couple visualizers. I don't have full music videos left, but I have a couple visualizers for other songs in the project, and they're super cool, and I'm excited about those too. But beyond that, like this project's campaign, I'm just going for big singles and videos, and just one by one, just try and build the momentum up until a full-length album, whenever that comes. And trying to be patient, not putting a date on it. It could be late 2022, it could be 2024. But whenever I get there, I want to be able to build the momentum slowly with this single and tease things with some more visual content, play around with the modeling and stuff I've been doing, and just see if I can get one song to help me leap forward. I think that's one of the ways that at this junction in my career I need to move forward. So those are the main things, and I'm quietly working on this album, but not rushing it and not putting out any percentages of how far into it I am or anything, just really sitting with it and taking my time over it. Yeah, and where to find me, Dap the Contract, that's DAP the Contract, all one word, on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, blah, 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 everything. And I'm also about to launch my new website, which has all my former projects, all the information you can need to find out about me, booking, everything. And that's dapthecontract.com. So yeah, that's
awesome.
where you can find me.
We look forward to some more Reka merch or not?
You know what I'm saying? This is Powers. This Powers Volume 1, and this has the Everybody Falls in the Summer tour dates in the back. This is the latest merch. This will be on there soon.
That's
still definitely some Everybody Falls tees.
Yes, I get stopped every time I wear this shirt. By the way, I'm just
that's crazy. I appreciate that.
I got like 5 people in Tulsa that are. But this has been incredible, Dap. Thank you so much for doing.
Thank you.
You know, yes, this has been so much fun. It's been long overdue for us to have a conversation for real. So I thank you for taking the time, getting on the calendars.
We miss you in New York, man. I miss your energy. I miss your physical support. You're always supporting. This was awesome. I really appreciate the questions too. So thank you.
Of course, these are real questions that I actually have as somebody who's grinding in this space on the business side, right? So I like to have these conversations because I want to position myself as the business behind the artist. And in order to do that, you really have to get under the hood of like what the artist is going through, how they're navigating in the world of like independent artistry. What is that? What does that look like coming in and creating relationships with artists? So it's all a learning for me. And at the end of the day, I was like, all right, I could have this conversation, pick up the phone and chat with him about it, or I could like distribute this information broadly and hopefully
it might help somebody.
Yeah, sure. So I appreciate you demystifying parts of that creative process. And thank you to everyone for tuning in to Pros on Process. I'll continue to use this platform to pull back the curtain on obscure aspects of the creative process. And to the TP tribe, if there are any other questions you wish we could have covered, make sure to leave us comments in the chat below. And we'll try to get another pro on to tackle their creative process as it pertains to your inquiry. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel to stay in the loop and give this video a thumbs up to keep them coming. All right, have a good one, Dap.
Thank you. Appreciate you, fam.